Listeners, are you ready for your monthly literary adventure? We now have the BFF Book Club. Join us each month to explore a new book. After reading, connect with fellow book lovers and meet the author in a live interview. Can't make it live? Don't worry. We'll send you the recording. You can find all the upcoming book club selections at www.bookishflights.com/read/BFF Book Club. Hi, I'm Cara Infante, and this is Bookish Flights. In each episode, I chat with one bookish guest as we take some time to sample and savor the pairing recommendations from their bookish flight. We hope to give you suggestions to cultivate your TBR list and nurture your leisure time through books. In today's episode, I am chatting with Leah Koskinen. Leah is a mom of two living in Clarkston, Michigan. 6 years ago, her cancer journey began when she was diagnosed with stage 3 melanoma. Now, years later, as she navigates mom life and recovery, she devotes her days to promoting sun safety awareness on her Instagram page at MakeDermSure, chasing her kids around and reading as many books as she can. Welcome to the show, Leah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you today, listeners. Leah and I met on the world of Bookstagram. If you're not familiar with it, just Instagram, but it's like focused on books. And so I've been following her, and she has some great information on her page, which I'll make sure to link in the show notes. So make sure you go over there and check it out and learn about Leah and her journey and all the tips that she gives you for your skincare. So, well, Leah, I feel like you're also so much more than this bio. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are?
I am, like Kara said, a mom of two. When my son was born, who's now 7, we moved to Canada for 2.5 years for my husband's job, which only is about 4 hours from where we live now in Clarkston. And so at that point, I became a stay-at-home mom because I didn't want my son to be in a different country and be in daycare full time. And I wasn't really sure that I was even ready to go back after 3 months. I never thought I would be a stay-at-home mom. If you would have said to my 18-year-old self, you will be a stay-at-home mom one day, I would have laughed at her and said, you're crazy. There's no way I'm doing that. But
Have you heard me say that on the show? Because I say the same thing all the time.
Yeah. But fast forward to now, I'm so happy that I am, and it's worked out great. It's been a journey. It's been an adjustment for sure. But one thing that was a real turning point in my stay-at-home mom life journey was being diagnosed with stage 3 melanoma at the age of 25. So it was shortly after my son's first birthday, and my mom had said to me, now that you're a mom, I think you should start seeing a dermatologist. You can go to where I go. I think you should just start getting a skin check once a year. You have moles on you. You've never had anybody look at you from head to toe. Why don't you go get checked out? So the timing ended up being a huge blessing in disguise. I had a mole pop up right over my bra strap, which in all honesty is the only reason I even noticed it was in a spot where it kind of touched the mole, it kind of rubbed it weird. And that had popped up a month before that skin check. So I went in for my first skin check, and the doctor said she was going to take it off and biopsy it. But she said, I'm really not worried about it. I'm just doing this to be safe. And I knew nothing about skin cancer. I grew up in the generation of, we knew what sunscreen was. It wasn't something we wore consistently by any means. I definitely remember putting baby oil on, putting like the lotion with the extra air quote tanner in it, mowing my parents' lawn in my bikini so that I could get a tan while I did house chores, that whole deal. Did use tanning beds. So I'm sure I heard the term skin cancer, but I knew nothing about it. Wasn't on my radar whatsoever. So
yeah, and at 25, you're not thinking like, no, this will be fine. Like, I'll be good.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then the doctor said, I'm not worried about it. So I left that skin check. I didn't think twice about it. I came back to Canada. And about a week later, she called me and she said, "Hey, it's melanoma. We're concerned about how deep it is, and we immediately want to transfer you over to University of Michigan to have them handle everything from there." So
Wow.
that was a huge turning point in both my family's life, my stay-at-home mom journey, all of it. Um,
So you were
so I
still
ended up,
living in Canada at that point.
yes,
Okay.
yes. And being that we knew it was only a 3 year, we ended up being there for 2.5 years. Being that we knew it was a short assignment, we kept all of our doctors in Michigan because it was
Yeah.
easier to just come home and do all of that. Um, so I had surgery a month after my diagnosis. U of M did a great job of getting me in quickly. Um, and the cancer ended up being in my sentinel node, so they took the sentinel node also.
Wow.
And I'm monitored very heavily.
Okay.
I have skin checks, I get CT scans, MRIs, ultrasounds. I started off getting all of that every 3 months, and then it slowly backed up to 4 months. And then now I'm on a 6 month rotation. Um,
Is there, I imagine each time you go for the scan, even though, okay, I've been okay for now, I imagine there's a level of anxiety though that comes with
yes,
that.
the anxiety is so hard. And it's one thing that I've learned the last couple of years is navigating mom life plus this diagnosis is that I have to be really intentional about the timing of things. So, for example, my CT scan and MRI the last couple of years has fallen at the end of August, which is when right before school starts and you're doing all the meet the teachers
Mhm.
and you're having to get all the supplies and do all of that. And that feels like a stressful time for me, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like my son starts to get nervous about school starting and we have so many extra to-dos we have to do and we're going to school more for all these things. And so one thing that I have learned that I said to myself this year was, okay, next year we're not going to do all your scans right before school starts. You either need to do them in the middle or beginning of August or wait until September because it's really stressful. The anxiety is really hard. Even now, being 6 years out, there's definitely been hiccups along the way of having to get a lot of other moles taken off. And then you
Yeah.
have to wait a week again for the results to come back. Or like, there's other things. Like I had a lung infection last year and they were concerned that it might have been cancer until we could figure out that it was an infection. So it's definitely something that it's not like once you get past the surgery, you're like good to go and it's out of your mind and
Yeah.
you can just move on with your life. It really has changed the course of everything.
Yeah. And I think that I mean, I can't speak for all listeners, but that, you can understand that you don't have the bandwidth, right? When your brain, when there's this feedback loop of the stress and anxiety of everything that's going on, like you don't have the bandwidth to add in anything extra. So I can see where like, okay, I can't do this at the start of the school year. Like I can't add that in because it's just, I mean, I think we've maybe been there, right? Of like not similar situations, but you just don't have the bandwidth for the extra at that moment.
For sure. It's like you want to show up for your
Yeah.
kids, this, that, and the other thing, but you know, you can only force that so much. And it's amazing how much I realize that I don't sleep beforehand. And then it's like as soon as the tests are done, that gives me a little bit of relief just because it's always a good check mark to like get those
Yeah,
off.
I did it. Okay.
Yeah. But then like until you find those results that like everything's good, it's really, it took me a while to even realize that that was making such an impact on me
Yeah.
physically, mentally.
So did you move at that point? So you transferred your care to U of M. Did you then move back to Michigan and stay, or did you go back and forth, or how did
We
you?
went back and forth.
Okay.
Yep. We went back and forth. So after my surgery, we stayed in Michigan for like 6 to 8 weeks, which thankfully my parents live close. They're both retired. So they were a huge help. My husband was able to work remote some. Um, yeah, so we did a lot of back and forth, which was insane. It's one of those things that you think back and you're like, how did we do that?
Hmm.
How did we make it through? But I also think it was a huge blessing because there was so much to balance and it kept me busy. And I like to be busy and I like to have my mind sidetracked,
Yeah.
um, especially during that, heavy time. So It was a lot, but it was good. There was a lot of blessings in it.
Yeah. So fast forward to today, you
Mhm.
started your page on Instagram to kind of help raise awareness for melanoma, right? And skin protection. And it's probably not the
Mhm.
right word, but you know what I mean with that.
Yeah, so it's raising awareness, especially for younger people, is something that I've wanted to do pretty much since I was diagnosed. But it's hard to talk about and it's a
Yeah.
lot. And I didn't feel that I could show up in the way that I wanted to show up until I gave myself time to heal and process. So fast forward now, I just hit my 6 year mark in May. Um, and I decided then I'm ready for the world to know that it's so important to protect your skin. This isn't just something that when you're 70 years old
Hmm.
that you have to deal with. This isn't something that we just worry about later in life. It's actually most important from the time that you're an adolescent until you turn 18. If you get two sunburns during that time, you are more than 50% likely to get skin cancer at a younger age.
Wow.
So being that I have two small kids and that I was diagnosed at a young age, I feel really passionate about teaching people about that, about building habits with your kids, making sure that they're putting sunscreen on, that they're getting used to you putting sunscreen on, whether you're doing it or they're doing it, how important it is to make that a daily habit so that when they get older, they just do it because that's what they grew up doing.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I know there's all different types of sunscreens out there on the market, and I imagine that there's some better than others. Do you have any recommendations there?
Yeah, I love trying new sunscreens because there are so many, and there's the whole mineral versus chemical. And I will say the most important thing is that you're wearing sunscreen.
Okay.
So if you're getting overwhelmed by what kind should I do, um, just put some on. Find some. That's the most important thing. Um, but I do like e.l.f. has a really good face sunscreen. Um, there's a company called Melon who was actually founded by a fellow melanoma survivor. She has great both a lotion for your body and a spray.
Okay.
Um, there's a company called Daily Shade who has a really good mineral base tinted, which is difficult to find. And it's specific for kids. Adults can use it too, but it's great for kids because it doesn't have a lot of the added chemicals.
Sure.
But my bigger thought on this is to try and stick to lotions over sprays. I know for kids, sprays are easier because it's like wrangling a baby alligator, trying to get your
Yeah.
kid to stand still for 2 minutes so you can get the sunscreen on. But the problem with the sprays is that you typically put them on outside and the wind, the whatever, it's super easy to miss
Yeah.
half your arm. If you're going to use a spray, I suggest putting it in your hand and then rubbing it on your kid's skin. Um, or just use a lotion because it typically gets you more coverage.
Yeah. Do you have any? That was going to be my next question. If you have any tips for getting sunscreen on your kids.
Yeah, so my most favorite one is to use a makeup brush.
Okay.
Um, put it on the brush first and then put it on, especially for their face, because they're always like closing their eyes, their mouth is wide open, they're,
Yeah.
and the brush just seems to be a little bit more. My kids don't get as nervous that I'm going to get it in their eyeballs or their mouth with the brush. Um, and I have been working with my kids on coming up with like a fun song when they're
Yeah.
putting their sunscreen on, just to make it interactive and make it like we're doing this together. Or I have taken the bottle of sunscreen and drawn like a smiley face and then rubbed it in that way. Um, just to make it into like a little game so that it's interactive and it's something that's catching their attention enough that they're standing still for long enough.
Yeah. So this might be a naive question. I imagine obviously wearing sunscreen daily, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to be outside. But what about reapplication? Like I know it doesn't last for a long time either.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I think it's something that's easily overlooked. People tend to put it on first thing in the morning, which is great. And then they think, cool, I'm good for the day. You need to reapply every 2 hours.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, you need to reapply every 2 hours.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I was like, I knew there was like it does. And again, like, here's me, like, I don't know. I know you should reapply. And like
Yeah,
you said, I'll do the morning. I like put it under my makeup.
yeah,
But then, I mean, we live here in San Diego, so it's sunny all the time. And I definitely, we'll go to the beach, we'll like everybody lather up, but then we don't, if we're there for a few hours, it's like, okay, when is the
yeah.
window of needing to do that again?
Yeah, it's every 2 hours. And I like to set a timer because obviously it's easy to
You
forget.
get
So
busy. Yeah.
yeah, as soon as everybody has it on, I set the timer and then it's an easy, when the timer goes off, we do a quick reapply.
Okay. Really good to know. I
Yeah.
also know, and you could probably speak better to this, but there are some things that you can look for on your own skin
Mhm.
that might, obviously getting skin checks you had mentioned every year is
Yeah.
good practice, but what about maybe things to watch for on your own skin if you notice pop up, maybe seek some
Yeah, so I think
advice.
the biggest thing is to just do that yearly skin check at your dermatologist. Dermatologists are there to catch things like this. Dermatologists are not just there for Botox and facials and all these cosmetic things that I think a lot of, it's a big misconception. They're there to help protect your skin. Um, so things to look for if a new mole pops up, majority of melanoma is found in a new mole. It can pop up in an existing mole, but typically it's a new mole. So if you see something new pop up, if the color gets really dark, if the shape, instead of it being more like a circle, the edges of the mole are kind of jagged or they just look a little bit funky. Um, Sometimes the size can be an indicator. Um, I think it's just good for people to be aware of what moles look like on their skin so that if something new pops up or something starts to change, you kind of have a baseline of this looks a little bit different than it used to.
Yeah. And I think as a PT, I remember always saying, like, just pay attention, listen
Yes,
to your body, right? And I think in this way, it's a visual paying attention and, knowing like, okay, this is what they look like on my body. So if you have something different than that, then that might be, okay, I need to go get this checked out.
for sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, anything else you'd like to add for the listeners to maybe be aware of or to look for?
Um, I think my biggest PSA is I'm not here to make anybody feel bad or to like scare anybody into you need to wear sunscreen every 2 hours, every single day for the rest of your life. Um, I try and do that just because of my history, but I'm a big like progress over perfection type of person. So please wear sunscreen. Make it easy for yourself. We're all super busy, especially the moms. Put it in your moisturizer. You're already washing your face and putting on lotion. Have it be in something that you're already using. Same thing with your kids. I know skincare is becoming a big thing for the tween girls. So make sure that they have it in their moisturizer. And then make it easy for yourself. Have a bottle of sunscreen in your purse. Keep some by the front door. Keep some by the back door when they go out in the backyard to play. Just kind of set yourself up for success in that way that it's just so easy and it's so accessible that I might as well do it. I like to keep a hat in my car for myself and the kids. I have like a really light UPF jacket that I keep in the car so that I have options to protect myself, even if, so you're not reinventing the wheel and feeling like every time you leave the house, you have to grab all this stuff.
Yeah. Because let's face it, if you have kids, you know that that doesn't happen either. You're like scrambling
Yeah.
out the door and you don't have time. Living
Yes.
in San Diego, I drive a minivan. Listeners, I don't know that I've told you that. Yeah,
Oh,
6 years ago when I had to get one, I was like, I cried, but different story for a different day. But in the back, they have these like great little cubbies. And so one is our hat cubby. So everybody's got hats in there. And our other one is our jackets. Because if you've been to San Diego, it can get cold really quick when the sun goes down. So we all have layers of clothing in this other little cubby, and it's fantastic. So,
yeah. Yeah, exactly. The only thing about sunscreen in the car is you got to make sure it doesn't get too hot. So in the summer months here in Michigan, I won't keep it in my center console. But when it gets cooler, I will. But if you have it in your purse typically is with
oh,
you. So
okay.
it's
I
not,
didn't know that.
overheating. Yeah.
My neighbor introduced me to these things. They're called Sun Buddies. Have you heard of them?
Yes.
They're like an application thing and it's got a foam, like it's got a roller ball, but it's a foam thing. And so
Yes.
she did a big order for like, her group of friends last year, and I jumped in on it and got it. And I think it has helped. Application is a little wide on the face for especially my little
Yeah.
guy, but it
Yeah.
works for the rest of the body really well. And you can see it like lathering on, and it works great.
Yes. Same thing. It's like the same concept as the makeup brush.
And he enjoys using, they like using it too because it
Yeah,
looks
which
cool.
is
It's like
like
bright colored and they enjoy using it too.
for sure makes it fun for them. And I think that's the biggest key. I would love to have some sort of campaign in the future around like sunscreen being cool. Like you see all those little gel things that people put on hand sanitizers, like from Bath and Body
Oh yeah,
Works,
the
like fun
decorative.
characters and they're sparkly. We should do that for sunscreen. We should have a little,
Yeah,
holder that can clip onto your backpack
that would
and
be
make
great.
sunscreen fun. Yeah. So I think one other thing I'd like to say really quick for the kids is teaching your kids that wearing sunscreen is so you eat fruits and veggies to protect the inside of your body. You wear sunscreen to protect the outside of your body.
Oh, I
So we're
like that.
not scaring them. We're not making them afraid of the sun, but we're teaching them that this sunscreen protects your body, the outside of your body from the sun, which is just as important as the inside.
Okay. That's a really good way of putting it for them. Because, like you said, you don't want them to be fearful or afraid
Right.
either.
Right. Yeah, we need to do all the outside activities to get that energy out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about reading. Have you always been a reader, or did this really change with this diagnosis 6 years ago?
Yeah, so I've always enjoyed reading. I would say after college, in college you have to read so many things that you don't want to read that I took a little hiatus. So after college, I would say I picked up reading, but then, it just kind of fell off. And then after my diagnosis, it really ramped up. It really became the way for me to drift off, to daydream, to attach to somebody else's
Yeah.
world, to just not stress about my own life at the time. Um, yeah, so it's been, 6 years since I've really dived back into it, and it's the best. It's really calming for me. It's really grounding. It's like my form of meditation.
Yeah, I agree with that. I didn't have like a big health diagnosis, but it was like once I became a stay-at-home mom, it was almost like you needed that
Yeah,
escape in the day of like, well, I'm stuck at the house for nap time again and I can't go anywhere, but I could go to, somewhere in my book.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, or like in the middle of the night with late night feedings, I'm like, well, I guess I'll just read my book and not think that I'm up at
Mhm.
2:30 in the morning for
Yeah, which I think is so important, right? Because with a health diagnosis, there's only so much you can control.
Yeah.
But the type of person that I am, I wanted to jump right into, okay, what do I need to do to get the cancer out right now, to fix all of this so that I never have to worry about it again? And unfortunately, that's not realistic. And that
Yeah.
was really hard for me to wrap my brain around. So instead of just having that spiral constantly in my head, it was like, okay, you need to focus on something else.
Yeah.
And books were perfect.
Oh, that's
Perfect.
awesome. So what type of genres do you typically read?
I read a little bit of everything. Um, Romance, fiction, and mystery thriller, I would say are my top three that I kind of rotate. I always have a physical book and an audiobook going at the same time. And I typically like to do two different genres so that I'm not getting like if I've got two romances going on audio, it could be
Yeah.
kind of easy to get characters confused. Um, so as long as I'm doing two different books, I have one of each going.
Yeah, it keeps the storyline different enough.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
imagine though that life is also pretty busy for you. So how do you find time to read in your days?
I have my headphones and my book with me at all times. They're always in my purse. Um, and I'm really intentional about finding those chunks of time. So if I'm doing a load of laundry, my headphones are immediately going in. If I'm making dinner, sometimes even if I'm playing with my daughter, she's 2, so I can multitask a little bit. Um,
Have tea time with your audiobook?
Yes, yes. If I'm sitting in the car picking my son up, I just really have them both with me so that if I have 10 minutes, instead of sitting on social media or watching a TV show, I try and do reading or listening instead.
Yeah. That's what really changed we used to like record shows, right? Back in that day, we would record shows and then we moved overseas. And so it was like, well, we don't have DVR anymore and I don't speak Italian, so I can't watch Italian TV. And there's only so many shows. At that time, there was only Netflix that was streaming, right? And there was only so many shows you could watch. And I'm like,
Yes.
so I just stopped watching TV and I've really never gone back. It's like books are my, little, like you said, meditation time and or wind down time at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it feels like I feel accomplished when I finish a book. I don't necessarily feel that way when I finish watching a TV show.
Yeah.
You know? So it gives you, especially for stay-at-home moms, sometimes you need that like sense of I was productive today. I accomplished something. And sometimes books can be that thing for me.
Yeah. Or at that point I would set a yearly reading goal, right? And then you would hit your reading goal and that was always exciting. Like, oh, I did do something.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
okay, well, you have been so gracious to bring a book flight with you today. Can you tell us how you chose these books?
Yeah, so circling back to the drift off word that I used, that's what my book flight is drift off. So I picked three books. There is a fiction, a mystery thriller, and a romance, all within the
Yay.
flight. And they're all books that I felt like really allowed me to dive into that world and to focus there. Sometimes you're reading a book and you're like, it's not enough where
Yeah.
you're still thinking about all your to-dos. It's just not engaging enough. Whereas I felt like all three of these, I was 100% dialed in on what was happening in this person's world. And I picked one from each genre because sometimes you want something funny
Yeah.
and super lighthearted. Sometimes you want like a mystery thriller that has you so like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Is she going to get killed off or is she going to survive? And sometimes you just want something interesting. So, all three of these I felt like really had me living in their world.
I love that. Yeah, they need the hook. They need to be captivating.
Yes.
So what's the first book you brought today then?
The first one is Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I did the audio of this one
Okay.
and it was phenomenal. She had multiple voices, there was a little bit of sound effects, so it just really pulled me in. And it was really interesting to learn about the life of a professional athlete and some of the mental stuff that they go through and the thoughts that they have. Um, it was phenomenal on audio.
Okay, really good to know. I have had this one admittedly on my TBR for a very long time. It's a tennis player, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't quote this, but I think I read that it was kind of about Serena Williams. It's not
Okay. Yeah, she always
specific.
kind of writes like adjacent, right?
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. So Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And then what's the next book you brought today?
The next book is Long Bright River by Liz Moore. This is the mystery thriller.
Okay.
The chapters are really short. It's a quick read, which I appreciate sometimes when you need, you got to change it up. And this one just captivated me from the first chapter, and I needed to know what was going to happen next. And I felt like that was the theme the whole entire way through. And like I said, it was a quick read. It's a bigger book, but it goes so quick that I didn't want it to end. I wanted it
Okay.
to be
It sounds like a bingeable read, is what I'm hearing
Yes.
as you're saying this.
Yes,
So did you read
absolutely.
this one as hard copy or as an audiobook?
I did do a hard copy of this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it went really quick. Okay. Really good to
Yeah.
know. All
Yeah.
right. And then what's the last book? Or I'm sorry, that was Long Bright River by Liz Moore. And what's the last book you brought today?
Sylvia's Second Act by Hilary Yablon.
Okay.
This one I did the audio. And it was hilarious. I remember I was repainting my kids' playhouse outside, giving it a fresh coat of paint. And I do not enjoy doing those types of tasks typically. And I was so into the audiobook that I did two coats of paint all in one sitting because I didn't want to stop listening to it.
I say my house is infinitely cleaner thanks to audiobooks because it's like
Yes,
everything you don't want to do if you have an audiobook on, you can do.
100%, 100%. Yeah, so it's so funny and it's so lighthearted. Um, yeah, I don't know that I've ever laughed so hard at a
Okay.
book before. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I have a little dessert pairing for you today as you've been chatting. I'm going to see if you've read it though. Have you read Listen for the Lie?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Because I was going to say if you haven't, did you do it as an audiobook?
No, I did the physical.
It's so good as an audiobook because they make it sound like a podcast. Like
Oh,
when it goes into that section of, so listeners, if you haven't read it, it's a thriller, and
yeah.
it is about like basically that you are opened up to the story where she's wandering around in like her best friend's blood, and it's like, did she murder her best friend or did she not? But it's told from like her perspective are some chapters, and the other perspectives are from a true crime podcast that has kind of dove back into this story that was 5 years old at that point.
Mhm.
It's a fantastic audiobook because it kind of does like the whole jingle of the podcast. And then it
Oh,
like introduces like, whatever his name was, from the podcast. And then it'll go into the podcast episode. And then it'll go to like the chapter with her talking. And it's a fantastic audiobook.
I did love the physical book too. And it's different having it be a podcast in a book. You don't
Yeah.
see that very often.
And I
I
don't think
agree.
I just loved it because I'm a podcaster. I think it was a great, like, I really was like the whole time, like trying to figure out who did it. And it captivated me as well.
Yes. And I think that's the biggest thing with mystery thrillers. That's like my marker of was it at least a 4-star or not, is did it keep me guessing until the end? If it's
Yeah.
too predictable, if halfway through the book I'm like, well, obviously she did it. To me, that's not a good mystery thriller. And I think that can be hard. I think I rate mystery thrillers harder than I do like a romance,
Yeah.
because a romance is light and fluffy and it makes me feel good. Well, then it was, a decent book. Whereas mystery thrillers, you really gotta keep people guessing until the very end.
Yeah. I have realized I'm a very emotional rater. Like, if I rated the book the moment I finished it, most often, right, you feel so good about like the character got their happily ever after, or the happy ending, and or the transformation, and so you feel really good. But then if I sit on it for like a day, I can go back to the story and kind of those feel good emotions go away, and I'm like, I feel like I can give it more of an objective rating. Where if I rate it immediately, I'd be like 5 because I feel so good because they like got whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
But then
No,
I'll
that's
sit with it. I'm like, wait, but there was like, it kind of slogged in the middle, or, whatever I'm thinking. But it's like, I
yeah.
can't see that when I feel so good about whatever the character got.
Yeah, that's interesting because I typically, as soon as I finish it, I go and do a review on Goodreads because I'm nervous I'm gonna like forget something important
Yeah.
that I wanted to share. So maybe I'll try that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll
It's been
sit.
something I've been thinking about like for the past few months of how I really
Yeah,
am an emotional rater.
yeah.
So,
Interesting. I'll
yeah,
have
you
to
get
ponder
invested
that.
in the characters.
Right,
So,
absolutely.
thank you so much for bringing those books. How I love to end our show is with our bonus pairings, which are just a speed round of questions. Are you a rereader?
Nope.
Okay. All right. What is one book you've read that has changed your life?
There's the Authenticity Project I read that at least a few years ago. That really stuck out to me. And also Midnight Library.
Okay. All right. And then where is your favorite place to read?
In my house, I have this little lounger in our master bedroom that sits right by the window. I like sitting there. Sometimes I open the window if it's not too chilly so I can get the breeze, but not actually be outside.
That sounds great. And then lastly, what are you reading next?
Right now, I'm doing Happy Place by Emily Henry is my audio.
Okay.
And I'm doing Leanne Morietti's new book, Here One Moment by Leanne Morietti. And that one's pretty heavy, so I paired it with Happy Place because that's a funny romance.
Yeah, your fellow Michigander.
Yes, yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today and giving us all your tips and your skincare and raising awareness for us and helping us understand that a little bit more. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode today with Leah Koskinen and her Drift Off book flight. We'd love to hear what other books you'd pair with this book flight at bookishflights.com. That is also where you can find more information about today's book flight or other books that we talked about. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. Your review not only helps the show, but it also helps the podcast to reach others. make sure you are subscribed on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to make sure you will not miss an episode. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. As Emma Thompson said, I think books are like people in the sense that they'll turn up in your life when you most need them. Cheers to you, dear readers. Until next time.